you want to make sure that you get your image right. And that means making eye contact. When you're looking at yourself on the screen, you're not looking in anybody's eye when they're looking at you on their screen. If you want to do that, you have to look straight into your camera. So if you're speaking, make sure that you're making eye contact with the people in your meeting by looking directly into the camera. Everyone needs their own screen. No group sitting at a boardroom table. There's a real unique intimacy that can happen in virtual meetings. I've led a number of virtual meetings where there are tears, where people are really open about what's going on in their lives. But that doesn't happen when you've got 5 people that you can barely see sitting at a boardroom table. Everyone needs to have their own screen. And when they do, it's like they're participating fully in the meeting. Just test the tech beforehand to make sure that everything works. There's nothing worse than getting on the meeting and people can't figure out sound and they can't figure out their mic and they can't hear anybody. Just do your testing before the meeting starts so that you know that everything works. This is a simple thing, but it really does matter. Keep your camera on. When I'm doing a meeting and someone's camera is off, it's sort of like they're sitting in a boardroom with a bag over their heads. You have no idea if they're listening, if they're doing something else on another screen. They probably are, but they're certainly not engaged in the meeting. So if you want to have a good meeting where people are really engaged and you're accomplishing the things that you want to do, make sure that everyone's camera stays on for the duration of the meeting. Pay attention to your lighting. We've all attended meetings where someone is sitting against a window and there's light in the window and all you can see is a black shadow of their head. And it looks like they've just been released from jail or they're a criminal or something like that. They're not trustworthy. Make sure you have light in front of your face so that your face shows up clearly and everyone can trust what you're saying and actually see what you're saying. They can see the expressions on your face. Just pay some attention to your lighting and make sure that it's right. I want to spend the next few minutes talking about your background. You need to consider your background. Most people don't give it a thought. Have you ever seen the hostage taking background? This is when someone is sitting against a stark white wall and it looks like they've just been taken hostage and they're giving their ransom demands to the camera. Don't have the hostage taking background. Or how about the slob background? I remember one time I was an advisor meeting with other advisors and a client, and the supposed CFO, this very highly placed financial expert, was sitting in a basement with insulation hanging out of the ceilings and stacks of old garbage behind him and an exercise bike. And I think if people were thinking like I am, you're thinking, does this guy know how to produce financial statements because he can't keep his basement clean? You don't want to do that. Let your background tell a story about who you are. That includes things like plants, books, decor. Just choose it carefully because people are going to examine everything that you have in your background. Just consider the content of your background because people watch your background closely. They look at every book, they examine every picture, and you have to ask yourself, what message do you want to send to the world? You're putting an image out there. How do you want people to view you? So through the magic of video editing, we're going to go on a little field trip and I'm going to take you to my actual office and show you my virtual background and maybe give you some ideas. So here we go. Welcome to my actual virtual background. I do lots and lots of virtual meetings and I have given some attention to my background. So I thought you might just be interested to see some of the ideas that I've used and maybe it will give you some ideas of your own. So first I make sure that my face is centered on the screen so that you can see me clearly. I've also paid some attention to my lighting. So I make sure that I've got lights in front of my face so that it highlights my face and I'm not sitting in shadows. I put things in my office on purpose. So the first thing is all of my books. These are not thrift store books. I didn't just spend $75 and go down to the Goodwill and load up on books. These are actual books. And if you're a reader, you might recognize some of the volumes that I have here in my library. If I'm ever on a virtual meeting and I'm watching someone speak, I'm always interested in what they have in their backgrounds, aren't you? Like I'm looking to see if I recognize any of those books or to see what interests them. I've also tried to put some personal touches so that people can get a little glimpse of who I am. So I put up some pictures. Now, these pictures I just print off on my printer. They're not some, original art or anything like that. So right now I've got Winston Churchill up there, who I think was a fairly decent leader. I've got an old ship, the HMS Victory, that I included in my book. But I swap those pictures out. I just print out a new one every quarter or so, just for people's interest. I've also put guitars on my wall. Okay, I have enough guitars in my collection that it's a problem in my marriage. And I just like to show people that I have other interests too. There's other things that I can do. And so I change the order and the position of those guitars. Sometimes there's acoustics up there. Sometimes there's different electrics. but I've tried to put things there that interest my viewers. What are you doing in your background? Do you have plants? Do you have decor? Do you have books? Do you have other objects that say something about yourself? Don't just make it luck. Put some time and thought and effort into your background, and you'll see the rewards, and you'll appear much more credible when you're on screen in your virtual meetings.